I think a lot of people are concerned in general that AI is going to replace their job, right? The cool thing about this AI leasing technology we've been using now for several months is that if somebody's going on our website and they're inquiring about a 2-bedroom unit, well, the AI leasing basically can answer all their questions.
Welcome to Brave New Edge, the show where we explore the technologies, tools, and ideas reshaping the future of investment. Today, we're joined by someone who has become one of the recognizable leaders in the multifamily investment space, Zach Haptonstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Zach, nice to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really excited to be here.
Yeah. For those that do not know you already, can you introduce yourselves and Rise 48 in general?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to bringing value to the listeners. And so, yeah, I'm Zach Haptonstall. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. So we are a multifamily owner operator. So we buy existing apartment buildings and we renovate them, do value add strategies to increase the value, and then sell them to get a profit margin for our investors. We have purchased 62 different apartment buildings, about $2.5 billion of real estate, about 12,000 units. We're a vertically integrated company, which means we have our own property management company, our own construction company. And so we do all the on-site, day-to-day property management, all the construction plans, everything for renovating these units. We have about 350 full-time W-2 employees across the country. And so our headquarters are here in Scottsdale, Arizona, but we own properties and we have local offices in Phoenix, Dallas, Texas, and then North Carolina. So in North Carolina, we're in Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area, and then Greensboro. And so we're just focused on those three markets really, as North Carolina, Phoenix, and Dallas. And we're buying these existing deals and generating increased value for our investors. So we're always looking to see from an operational perspective, Sneeja, is how can we optimize everything and make it more efficient, all the way from property management day to day to investor reporting to lead generation to find new prospective tenants for these buildings. And so that's kind of what we're focused on.
Okay, great. So when you think about your typical day, so what's the first moment where AI or data actually shows up and makes your life easier in this case?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so, at the time of this recording, which is near the end of 2025 here, we are actively looking and exploring how to generate new use cases for AI. How can we apply AI into different departments of our business to make it more efficient? I actually just signed up for a full day workshop where they're going to come in and talk to different department heads in our company to see how we can, optimize things. And so, we are now, we're using like Microsoft Copilot with a lot of our staff, try to optimize emails, things like that. We actually just recently signed up for the business account for ChatGPT. So using the LLMs, just to help, optimize a lot of clerical items for our team. And so far, Sanisha, what we're doing is we're implementing AI on our underwriting models. And so basically, anything that's like a clerical data entry type of job, which is really just wasting our employees' time, we're trying to implement it there. So we're constantly evaluating and underwriting new properties, okay, where we're basically saying, okay, we're trying to find a property in Dallas, Texas, and we need to take all the property financials from the last 12 months, input it into an Excel model, and then put in different underwriting assumptions for our operating expenses, organic rent growth, things like that. So we've just recently implemented a new AI tool that can automate that entire first step in that first wave of underwriting, because before that was just a lot of manual entry, from our analysts, which is just taking up their bandwidth. And so, we can talk about this later, Sanisha, but one thing I've been realizing from reading different AI books just the last literally 4 to 8 weeks is that I think a lot of people are concerned in general that AI is going to replace their job, right? As a business owner, to be honest, if I can be more efficient and, either cut headcount or cut payroll, obviously we want to do that as a business owner. But I've been realizing personally is that it's not necessarily going to take your job. It's elevating the job, elevating the role and the responsibilities of the individual human. Because if you are able to replace a lot of the clerical administrative tasks that are wasting your time as a human with technology, you are now freed up to do higher level tasks and make more of an impact to the organization, right? And so, I was reading a book recently, Tanisha, called The AI Driven Leader, and it talked about how, before the Industrial Revolution, people, the average jobs were completely different than after the Industrial Revolution. It completely transformed what workers' roles and responsibilities were day to day. And that continues to evolve, from the internet and as the technology evolves. And so I think people need to realize that AI is coming, whether you like it or not, and it's going to be an advantage or a disadvantage. It's kind of like the internet, because I used to be in the camp, Sanija, that AI is bad, robots are going to take over the world. I used to kind of think that, and I was like, I don't trust it. But I heard a good analogy that when the internet emerged, people were worried about the internet becoming a tool for evil. And the reality is that there's always going to be good actors and bad actors for any type of technology. AI is no different. So how do we use that to enhance or leverage higher level tasks for our employees and for our team? And so anyways, I know I kind of went on a tangent there, but I think that we're trying to figure out, how do we implement it throughout the organization so that the people we do have are not getting eliminated, they are actually getting elevated to doing more impactful type of duties day to day. And so that's from the underwriting perspective. Now, one powerful area we've been implementing AI is in our day-to-day operations on the property management side. Okay, so we're using an AI leasing bot called Elise AI. It's like an integration into our property management software. And basically, whenever these buildings are typically open like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Right, and so if a prospective tenant is coming to the property after business hours, the office is closed and we could lose that lead. Or if they're going to our property website and they want to inquire or they call our office after business hours, we are potentially losing that lead. The cool thing about this AI leasing technology we've been using now for several months is that if somebody's going on our website and they're inquiring about a 2-bedroom unit, well, the AI leasing basically can answer all their questions. How many of them do we have available? What is the level of renovation? And what is the price per month for that option? When is it going to be move-in ready? Are there any specials or concessions that you can take advantage of? So it's answering all those questions with dynamic answers that are up to date and accurate, because it's pulling from the data we have in the property management software. So people are getting, those immediate answers, which is important, Sneeja, because as you know, we live in an environment, in a society where people have short attention spans. So if they are not getting those questions answered, they're moving on to the next one and you lost the lead. So when you're getting immediate, and people don't really want to talk to a human anymore. They don't want to call in. A lot of these are like chat bots or text bots that are answering these questions. And then most importantly, the biggest impact with the AI leasing tool is that it is scheduling in-person tours. Okay, so a lot of the times when people are going on our website, they're calling or they're showing up to our property after hours. And again, people are working, right? So a lot of these leads do come in after hours when the office is closed because they had to work all day and they're coming in at night or whatever it may be. Well, it is scheduling these tours immediately for them on a different day with an actual human, right? So we've seen that our conversion of leads to closing has increased significantly from AI leasing. First of all, our conversion from lead to tour is through the roof because now people can schedule these tours with one of our human on-site employees during business hours. But if we were getting a lead after hours, a lot of those were not converting because somebody puts in an inquiry and then the next business day, our staff is calling them. They may have lost interest or they found something else, whatever it may be. Now we're getting the tour set up immediately. So if it's the next day or 2 days later, whenever that person's available, then they can tour with a person. And then our human person can close that lead and sign that lease. And so that's another example where, as before, our on-site leasing staff was having to spend a good chunk of time following up on leads to set up tours for leads that came in after hours. Well, now we've been able to significantly decrease that and optimize their time to where they're now focused more on closing leads, right? So again, it hasn't replaced the leasing agent, but it's made them more efficient with their time and it's optimized the performance of the property. So, I mean, from a property management perspective, that's been something that we've seen literally immediate impact. And we just started that maybe 3 to 4 months ago at the time of this recording. And it's helped a lot. And so those are a couple immediate things. I mean, we're also looking to see how can we implement it into our accounting department, because obviously we have a lot of corporate accounting We have, I don't know, 20 plus full-time employees on accounting, between corporate accounting and property accounting. And so we're trying to see, okay, how can we optimize clerical entry-level data using AI? At the end of the day, we still need humans to review this work. Okay, that's kind of the challenge, is that people think AI can do everything. Well, you still need humans to confirm the data is correct. But if we can save time on the front end, great. That's what we're trying to do. So those are a few of the areas that we're looking at, Sanija, in implementing it.
Yeah, that's a great use example, and I really appreciate for you sharing this part. So I would say that you started from the general use of standard LLMs and everything, as you said, like you're using it on a daily basis. This is what we see with the other industries, so people are starting. But I really appreciate this sharing of this specific tool and this chatbot that you introduced, and it's good that you've shown that it is actually giving results. Are you using some of the machine learning tools to predict like the construction cost, material pricing fluctuations, or labor availability as you scale across the multiple markets here?
Yeah, good question. And so, I mean, I know that, for example, some of the technology we're using for underwriting. So, like whenever we're underwriting a deal, underwriting means we are evaluating a new apartment building to see if we want to buy it, right? And so, we are looking at data like, what is the median income of that area in a 1 to 3 to 5 mile radius? What is the crime score? And so, before we're having to manually pull all this data from the internet or different softwares, and now the AI can just really pull that stuff immediately and give us a quick summary. Okay, this is the demographic from an income perspective. This is the demographic from a crime perspective. And then we also are looking at what are the rents being achieved by the comparable properties of the competitors in that area. Because with our business model, Sanija, we're basically saying, okay, I'm going to buy this property and I'm going to spend X amount of dollars to renovate the units, and I need to get X amount of rental increase or ROI, return on investment, to justify that. But can I actually push the rents to that level? Is it supported by the comps, the comparable properties in that area? And so one thing we're looking at right now is that, historically we've had to have our local asset management team has had to, physically go visit these other comparable properties or call their offices to see what rents are you charging for an unrenovated unit, what rents are you charging for a renovated unit. And that's how we're doing our market surveys, which is very time consuming and inefficient. And so now some of this new AI technology is basically just pulling and scraping the property websites from that immediate area to see what are their most up-to-date rents that they are asking and charging, what are their specials or their concessions that they are charging, so we can more quickly and efficiently at least do like a quick first pass, right? Because if they're scraping the property websites for all the comparable properties, we can quickly find out, are we even in the ballpark of this deal working, instead of us having to go visit the properties or start to call them. And if we're getting close based on that initial data set from the AI technology, then we will dig in deeper and we'll have our human employees actually go visit those properties or call them and really dive deeper into those numbers. But again, it's just another way to optimize things on the front end, to make it quicker and more efficient so that we can underwrite and evaluate more volume of deals. And so, I mean, that's one example I can think of that we're using it for there.
And have you ever had the data completely change your mind about some property? Like, did you see this, say that?
Yeah, we have. I mean, we constantly, it's like a 2% hit rate of properties that we actually go and pursue and buy from what we underwrite. I mean, from 2022 till now, the last 3 years, we've underwritten literally over 1,000 different properties across the country. We have an Excel spreadsheet where we track all this, and a lot of the time we're having to kill these deals upon that first pass where it doesn't meet the income thresholds that we needed, or the crime scores are too high, and we just immediately pass on the property. And we don't want to dig into having to, upload all the property financials and all that, because we know it's not a location we want to be in. Or if maybe it's a decent location, but the pro forma rents, the projected rents we're trying to hit after we renovate the units, if they are not supported, because we typically look for at least a 2.5 to 3x income, that the tenant has to make 2.5 to 3x of the monthly income of what that monthly rent is to qualify. So if we're saying, my rent is going to be $1,500 a month, and that demographic is not making $4,500 a month based on the data, we are going to pass on this property because we don't think that the demographic can support our business plan for we need to push these rents. And so, using AI to accelerate and optimize that upfront process of just pulling the initial data allows us to quickly move on to the next deal, right? Rather than having to dig in and manually pull all this different data. And sometimes AI is wrong, obviously, right? You talk about, they call it a hallucination with the large language models because they're constantly learning and being fed new data. So again, I think that as an organization, and this literally has happened in the last 8 to 10 weeks, mostly for me going to some conferences and seeing some good AI speakers, I've decided we need to completely be embracing and immersing ourselves in AI. And it sounds cliche. Everybody's like, oh, how do you implement AI? Like, what do you actually use to apply it? So we're actually learning what those use cases are. It's going to be dynamic, but there's a lot of different ways you can implement it. And I mean, I can talk about this here shortly, Sanija, but the one thing I've really been trying to embrace and just been doing recently is how to use AI as a thought partner for strategy, and so it's not necessarily like a function, but we can talk about that too if we get time.
Okay, so just for fun, when you're speaking about this, so what's the one tech tool you couldn't live without nowadays?
Oh man, it's a good question. I've been using ChatGPT a lot, and I'm like late to the game, so it's not anything groundbreaking or, sorry, it's not very innovative to people, but I think it's how you're using ChatGPT. I mean, I think, the LLMs, if they haven't already, we will replace the search engine, right? They're just more detailed, more efficient. And so people are using ChatGPT or Grok or Claude or whatever instead of Google more and more. And I think that'll just continue. You'll see those adoption rates increase. But I read a book called The AI Driven Leader. And then I met the author at a conference recently. His name's Jeff Woods. I recommend everybody read that book. It's really good because you don't have to be a tech person to understand the book or to implement any of its strategies. Because one challenge, as you know, Sanija, better than I do, is that the challenge with AI is that because it's constantly evolving, the technology is always changing. So I think some people are worried or concerned to invest significant capital into some type of AI, function or use case, because then it could change and become obsolete. But in this book, The AI Driven Leader, it talks about how you should be using the LLM, the large language model, which is a chat GPT, for example, as a thought partner, kind of like your board member or your business partner. And you, as the human, you are the thought leader. And basically, the whole purpose of the LLM is to help you to create strategy and to brainstorm to further advance your business, your life, whatever it is. And so it talks about CRIT, which is an acronym, CRIT. And it basically says how prompting the LLM or the chat GPT is the most significant and important aspect of getting the best results out of it, right? You have to give it the correct context and prompt it the right way. So the C stands for context, where you say, hey, my name is Sanija. We're creating a podcast around AI awareness. Our target demographic is X. We're planning to achieve X. And we'd like to know how we can do that and what are the strategies, what is the most profitable way to do it. And then the R is role. So you tell the chat GPT or the LM, what is their role? Your role is to interview me on how I can achieve these strategies. Ask me 5 questions one at a time to help me further expand my thinking on this. And then I is interview. Okay, so you say, ask me the questions and let's focus on this. And then the T is the tasks. And so you fill in those 4 things: context, role, interview, task, for whatever it is that you're trying to focus on and build out. And tasks would be like, Sadija's saying, hey, what do I need to do next to grow my podcast, which then generates leads for me to grow my company, whatever it is. And then it will start asking you questions and you're answering those questions. And it is basically giving you additional strategies that you may not have thought of, right? Or ways to leverage different things. That is what the whole book is about. It's how to use the LLM or the AI ChatGPT as your thought partner, whereas you may not have that business partner or that board member that is bouncing those ideas off of you, and vice versa. And you got to remember that the large language models, they have information from literally over 200 million books, right? So it's more data and information than any human could possibly have. So they are pulling from this large data set. And I think that in the past, I've been skeptical of it, but I'm learning myself, like literally the last 8 to 10 weeks, is that it's all about the prompting and the information that you give it, and you can use this as a tool to improve your life, your business, whatever it may be. And so that's kind of how we're looking at it.
Yeah, it's definitely a good book, so I would recommend it as well. So I will put a link into the notes so that people can access it as well. Yeah, thanks for sharing this. So another thing that I noticed here, and it's like the democratization of the tooling itself. Like everybody can access it right now, and as AI tools become more accessible. So do you think that the data-driven approaches will level the playing field for smaller operators? Or will they actually widen the competitive advantage for vertically integrated firms like Rise 48 at the end that can build proprietary system on their own?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sneej. I'm glad you asked that. I honestly think it levels the playing field and it democratizes it. The people that are going to get the advantage are the people who actually adopt it, right? And so I think that the people, if you have the mindset of we are going to adopt and utilize this technology, and you actually do that, you actually apply that, you are already immediately going to gain a massive advantage over your competition, because a lot of the competition is going to be slow to adopt. They're not going to buy in, whatever it may be. So just having that mindset and actually doing it, which again, I'm not an expert. I just came to this realization recently. Like, I need to jump on this and embrace it. So I think the people that do that are going to have a massive advantage. Now, the people that do that and also have capital to invest in proprietary technology, they're probably going to get even more of an advantage. But again, a lot of that money will probably get wasted because the technology will evolve. But I think the fact that they're spending money on it, I think you have to be careful, right? I mean, I heard that JP Morgan has like a $10 billion budget to invest in technology. They're going to be investing a lot in AI. And so I'm sure that a lot of that is going to pan out, and a lot of that are going to spend money on, and it may not, it may become, obsolete or irrelevant pretty quickly. So it's hard to say. But I think that if you have that mindset and you actually start applying it, and you stay up to speed on things to adapt, those are the companies that are going to evolve and gain that competitive advantage. I mean, it sounds like you read the book, Sanija, and they talk about the difference between Blockbuster and this whole concept of Netflix came out. And Blockbuster could have bought Netflix for $50 million. And the CEO said, yeah, right. We're not going to do that. And Netflix effectively put them out of business. Right. And so, hearing stories like that as a business owner kind of terrifies me, because it's like, you know what, you need to always be looking at what is the next innovative tool. You know what I mean? And luckily we're in real estate, so we're in hard assets. It's not as susceptible to that, but still, it's like, are my competitors going to be leveraging tools that I'm not thinking of to gain an advantage on over me? So I think as a business owner, you have to keep your mind open. You have to constantly be learning. And then as you're learning and you're embracing this yourself as a CEO or the entrepreneur, how do you actually integrate that and apply that throughout your organization and get your team to buy in, right? Because if there's only one person at the top that believes in it and buys in, it doesn't matter. You need people actually, applying that. And that's why we're going to do a workshop is really to get buy-in and brainstorming and get people going. So yeah, I do think it democratizes everything though. I think that people that had, information before, that was their big advantage. And now information is widely available, and it's only going to continue to be available.
When you say about, you're talking about the future, so let's say looking at the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see AI and the big data having the most transformative impact on multifamily investment? And where do you think that the hype exceeds realities? Like, are there some tools that might disappear at the end, which are currently used, and what will be, let's say, the strongest tool?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think within multifamily, it really depends on the demographic of the renter, because you have what's considered like Class A luxury apartments, which is like a high end, demographic and a smaller portion of the population. Then what we do is we don't do luxury Class A. We do workforce housing, affordable, where the bulk of the population lives. And I can tell you just from talking to our operations staff, we are constantly trying to stress the importance and emphasis of AI. And a big thing that they say is like, a lot of our demographic of our customers, which is our tenants, they want that customer service component. And a lot of the value is like our salespeople, effectively our leasing agents, having that human touch and that relationship component to close these leases, right? Because I think that people think, I mean, at the end of the day, every company is selling something, right? So on the property management operational side, we are selling housing and we need to get people to sign leases to move in. I think when you have a class A luxury demographic that may be more exposed in using AI and technology, you could probably start to replace humans in those leasing offices for that demographic. I think that, for more of like a working class type of demographic, I don't think you can necessarily just replace humans in 5 to 10 years. And I could be wrong, but I think that there's other human touch components to it, and so that'll be interesting to see. I think that on some of these apartments, I've already seen different apartments where there's no humans there. Basically, you do everything, you set up your own tour, so it's already happening now. And then it's just a matter of how effective are those. And then I think as far as like where is it going to evolve, I think that the ability for AI to take all the data and really more accurately predict real estate market cycles, that's the biggest value I can see. Now, the question is, how accurate can it be? But when I'm talking about real estate market cycles, it's going to have to consider supply of new housing. So it's going to have to predict trends for how many new permits are going to be pulled, how many new apartments are going to be built in this particular submarket, and what is the effect 3, 5, 10 years from now for supply versus demand. It's going to have to consider all the macro, dynamics, fundamentals of population moving there. How is legislation in that market going to change that? Businesses to move there for new job growth. Because when we're looking at these markets, we're looking at job growth, population growth. What is the supply of new housing? How is that going to impact rent growth, things like that? And so I think that if AI can really consolidate all that data and build models, that'll be where it's really the most effective. And so I think that component right there, I mean, that's going to be the most valuable. To answer your question, Sanija, is like, for us, it's like the macro demographics, like income, supply of new housing, jobs, and then legislation is hard too. But if you look at demographics, like what types of voters or demographics are moving into certain cities, how is that going to impact legislation for, is it going to become landlord friendly or tenant friendly? Because there's certain markets that we will not go to. We absolutely refuse to go to, because if somebody doesn't pay their rent, we cannot evict them for 6 months and it will destroy the investment. And so, and what you're seeing across the country is all these major core urban areas are becoming more progressive, where the tertiary markets are more conservative. And so, that's making it more challenging. And so if it can predict those trends, that will predict, that will help guide us into which markets we want to buy apartment buildings in.
And okay, so that's a great answer, I would say, in this part. And now when I do hear a lot of shaming of the AI in this case. And how do your investors respond when they hear you're using AI to forecast or model some of the operations? Do you see this in your day-to-day?
Yeah, that's a good question, Sanija. I mean, honestly, I think it's too early. I don't think a lot of our investors know we're utilizing AI, to be honest. So we haven't really talked about it a lot because a lot of it's just been internal. I don't think a lot of them realize we're using the AI leasing to gain advantages over our competition. They're just kind of looking at results, you know what I mean? And so I think for us, to be honest, it's just too early for us to have feedback one way or another. But I agree that in general, there's a lot of skepticism and lack of adoption around AI, because it's like, what does it really mean? How do you actually apply it? And literally, I've been one of those people, and I've really started to transform the way I think about this from reading a couple different books and seeing some different speakers at conferences the last few months, and realizing, okay, it's not going anywhere, and we need to be on the front end of this. And so it'll be interesting to see, how investors look at it. But I do think that they're focused on results, right? And so if we can become more efficient to get them better results, then I don't see how anybody would have a problem with that. They just want to make sure it's accurate, right? Make sure we have checks and balances so that there's accuracy.
Yeah, they're more focused on the results, I would say. So the results are there, so they do not care.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I would say that one of the last topics is some of the alternative data sources that you find most powerful here. So I guess you mentioned some of the standard data sources that definitely correlate with what you're actually trying to predict, like demographics or whatever, so crime numbers. So this is something that I guess you can buy from some of those data companies out of the box and use them. So are there some, I would say, exotic data sources that you would like to have them, or that which are not available, but you might see them as interesting for predicting some of the decisions that you're making?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few different companies right now that are like the biggest thing that I want to see, honestly, is I kind of talked about this briefly, like shopping the comps, like shopping rents for our competitor properties to see what they're achieving right now. There's different companies that are scraping websites, things like that, but we haven't seen the level of accuracy that we would like to see. There's also some like ethical challenges around that because one of the property management softwares has been, basically getting sued the last few years for like collusion among property owners. And so it's that fine balance of like, how does a company, ethically be able to provide market data on what rents other people are charging? And for us, it's when we're evaluating new deals, we want to know, am I going to be able to execute my business plan? If I spend this amount of money to renovate this unit, can I get X amount of rental increase? And is that increase already being proven out in the market? And so if we were able to create some type of proprietary, or some type of, tool that can be very accurate with that. Because again, these rents in Asia are changing daily on some of these properties, right? So you need something that's really tapped in, which is why I think the only real source is through a property management software. But then there were certain owners that were, allegedly colluding and driving up rents because they had that access. And so it's how do we leverage that data, in an ethical way, because that is what takes a ton of our time, not only on the front end to evaluate new acquisition opportunities, but also operationally, we make our staff at least 1 or 2 times a week, every single property, the on-site property manager needs to call all their competitor properties and shop their comps because we need to make sure we're staying competitive, right? And it takes a lot of time. And so it's like, is there a more efficient way to do that, so that we have that market data? Because it's like, think about like an airline. If you're an airline, you can go online and see what all your competitors are charging. Same with hotels. Hotels can go online and see what everybody's charging. With apartments, it's not as up to date. You can go to the property level websites, but that doesn't always tell the true story because there's different specials or concessions worked in there. They're not updating it as frequently. And it doesn't show you the rent being charged for different levels of finishes. Like if I go on an airline, I know what I'm going to have to pay if I buy a first class ticket versus coach, you know what I mean, versus the extra leg room. And, there might be 3 or 4 different types of units that have different rents, for a 1 bedroom at the same property. And we have to find out, okay, how much are you charging for the higher end finish, for the lower end finish? So if there was some type of technology that could in real time update that data, I think that would bring a ton of value to the industry. So anybody who's listening, if you create that, you become very rich, because I think a lot of people will use it.
Okay, great. So that's, I would say that's a great insight, and I guess it helped me for sure to get a deep insight into the real estate investment, and I guess for all of our listeners. So thank you one more time. Are there something that you would like to conclude our conversation here? Some last word?
No, other than, again, from somebody who's been a skeptic myself, AI is coming whether you like it or not. I think either adopt it and see how you can use it as an advantage or get left behind. And so I think it is very important, and have an open learning mind as compared to a closed off mind. And that's coming from, a former hypocrite myself. I think it's important.
Okay. Thank you, Zach. Thank you one more time. And yeah, all the best.
Thanks, Anija. Appreciate it.
Thank you.